Well, it's 11 o'clock, so if folks can find your seats and get settled in, I think we'll go ahead and kick off our panel here. 11 a.m., first breakout of the last day on rating services. So, first of all, thank you to the Climate Action Reserve. Excellent conference. I hope everybody else has been having such a productive time as I have, but always enjoy coming out to NACW, see a lot of old faces, a lot of new faces. I won't name the old faces. And thank you to all of you in the audience for joining us, and to my panelists for making the time and putting the energy into this. I'm going to give a few opening words. We'll hear a little bit from each of our panelists about who they are and what they do, and then we're going to try and spend most of our time in the discussion. We will have Q&A, so if you have questions that come up, hold on to them. We'll get a mic going around later on. So the voluntary carbon market has seen some pretty remarkable evolutionary phases, I think, over the last 2 or 3 decades. And, you know, one way I think about it, there's been like one segment of the market on this steady march towards increasing rigor, transparency, standardization. And then another segment of the market's always there that's like the Wild West. And sometimes that one gets more attention. These actors working, you know, outside of the sort of formal infrastructure, sometimes good intent, sometimes just trying to work around the system, sometimes very positive outcomes, sometimes not. But in the boom times, when the market is booming, the wild side is booming as well. At the same time, this more rigorous side of the market has really evolved and matured, seeing more innovation, advancements in, based on lessons learned through the implementation and influence of things like regulated markets, and sometimes even bringing new ideas out of the Wild West and bringing them into the rigorous structures. But we've seen, I think we can all agree, pretty dramatic growth in the last 5 years or so. And with that has come a lot of growth in scrutiny, as it should, right? There's more activity, so there's more attention. VCMs have faced a lot of intense criticism, some targeted, some just broad across the board, sometimes well-deserved, sometimes misguided, some of it unhelpful, sensationalist crap. And a lot of corporate buyers were already tentative about the carbon market, getting a little spooked. So what we've heard about in a lot of sessions is the rise of more influential efforts around establishing higher standards for integrity and quality. We've got the Carbon Credit Quality Initiative, the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market on the supply side, VCMI, and Oxford Offsetting Principles, SBTI on the demand side. I was doing a text search of the NACW program. The word integrity is in there 17 times this year, and that's 12 different sessions where either the title or the description is about integrity. So if you exclude the keynotes, that's more than 25% of the content this week is somehow focused on integrity of the market. So I think it's on everybody's mind. So despite all these different initiatives or work going on, or maybe because there's so many of them and it's confusing and their work isn't done yet, we're also seeing the development of private rating services, trying to meet the demand for simplifying due diligence and risk management in the voluntary carbon market. So that's what we want to dig into on today's panel, exploring the role and the function of these private rating services. It's not meant to be a sales pitch or a competitive fight, so if you came here to watch them slug it out together, that happens later during the networking break. So, closing here, to paraphrase the official description of our session, the ratings and standards organizations, both for-profit and non-profit, are striving to enhance transparency and mitigate risk, but they're also creating confusion and hindering. But are they also creating confusion and hindering progress with conflicting ratings for the same projects and programs? Question mark. So we're going to try and explore that question in some depth. So panel today. To my left, Spencer Meyer, Vice President of Ratings for BeZero, Donna, co-founder at Calyx Global, and Annalise, Downey, Senior Manager for Technical Climate Consulting with Sylvera. So maybe we'll go down the line in that order. Each of you spend 2 or 3 minutes, introduce yourself, your organization, and just give us a bit of insight into what you do and, more importantly, why you do it.
Donna's actually going to go first.
That would be fine.
Is this on? Or?
I think they're just on.
Oh, they're just on. There's not a button. Okay. Thank you so much for coming to this panel. it won't be a slugfest. I actually have a lot of respect for what my neighbors here do, both BeZero and Sylvera. And I don't think the market's going to be healthy unless there are multiple ratings agencies operating. So the question that we were given originally is why do you exist? And I've been working on climate change for about 2 decades and watching the market. And everyone who's been watching the market has known there's a quality problem. This is not a new issue. In some ways, like all the cognoscenti of the market has known that the quality is an issue. But in some ways, it was inconsequential because for the first 15 years of the voluntary market, let's say from the early 2000s up until around 2015, 16, 17, the market never traded above 50 million tons of issuances per year. And in some ways, it was exciting to see private money flow and capital flow into mitigation activities. But then in around 2019, it was the first time that the market was above 50 million tons a year. 2021, it was above 100 million. Oh no, 300 million. So I think it was 2019 was 100 million, and then in 2021, it went above 300 million tons. So I'm watching this market, and I'm thinking, wow, like we're starting to get up to a gigaton scale. And in fact, I looked yesterday, and I discovered that retirements just exceeded a gigaton. And issuances are about double that over the period. When it gets to this scale, even though like we would love to see more scale, right? All of us in this room would like to see the markets grow and see more mitigation, see more finance. But a gigaton is consequential. And a gigaton, to me, has atmospheric implications. So I asked myself, like, we know there are issues in this voluntary market. Why is this happening? Like, why are there integrity issues? And how can we create a market that can scale? I do believe in the ICVCM motto, if I can copy it, like, build integrity and scale will follow. So what is it in this voluntary ecosystem of actors that's needed to build this integrity, and what's happening? And I guess I landed on the fact that all the actors in this voluntary market are there to make the market. And that's how their business model works. Like, can we create an entity and enter into this space where the business model is aligned with the atmosphere, right? Where the business model is not to make the market, but the business model is to provide information, independent, decouple the revenue model and the business model from making the market to ensuring that the market is driving towards impact for the planet and for people. And maybe my last thing I will say is that when we first started Calyx Global, this planet and people were really important. I've worked on climate change, and I've watched money flow into the climate space. And there is almost a climate justice or equity issue here. We don't want, if we just did greenhouse gas integrity, we would drive all this finance to, direct air capture in Switzerland or the global north. And I do think that there's something that we should think about in terms of these financial flows and ensure that the most vulnerable people who will be affected by climate change but didn't cause it also can benefit from this market. And so that's why we do both greenhouse gas integrity, sustainable development impact. Our mission is better carbon markets for the planet and for people. That's why we exist.
Thank you.
I'm Annalise Downey. I am a technical sort of consultant on the Sylvera team, and my background is more in ocean restoration and coral restoration, and I've been with Sylvera for about 3.5 years. And Alistair, our CEO and co-founder, it started out with the initial idea of using technology, using remote sensing to be able to identify essentially the most additional places to develop carbon projects. And when he went to the market, he found that there was no price premium for quality because people couldn't distinguish between a high quality project and a sort of lower quality project. And so that is when the idea of carbon credit ratings emerged. And I will say that Sylvera is not a carbon credit rating agency. We are a carbon data platform that is serving the end-to-end value chain for our clients. And what does that mean? I think as we have stayed close to our customers and help them understand the variety of qualities and projects on the market, we have sort of demonstrated the diligence on the carbon credit projects, but where our clients are also asking for data is in the strategy setting phase, the discovery of projects, the deep due diligence, and all the way through sort of reporting and monitoring of those projects as well.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Spencer Meyer. I'm the Vice President of Ratings for BeZero Carbon. BeZero Carbon is a global ratings agency. We are a pure play ratings agency. We don't advise, we don't consult. And we believe that ratings will be a critical piece of the infrastructure indefinitely in the carbon market, all the carbon markets, not just the voluntary carbon markets, regulated markets around the world. Our co-founders come from the finance sector where the idea of ratings has been well established for a long time, and the markets are liquid and work importantly because of ratings in many ways. And the price premiums associated with quality is well established. And so our co-founders have brought that idea to the carbon markets, and that's why we're really focused on creating this infrastructure for the carbon markets. We're a team of about 160 people total, about 70 of whom are scientists on our analytical team, most of whom have PhDs and master's degrees in their respective disciplines. My own background is in nature-based solutions and forestry, where I've been working for a little over 20 years with foresters and landowners and companies and corporates, all of whom have been managing forests and incentivizing conservation actions and climate and water-related actions over the years. We have a team of people with expertise in their own disciplines. We cover the entire market, everything from technological engineered removals to blue carbon to all types of forestry credits to oil and gas credits, renewables. Really, we cover the entire market. We've rated about 400 projects globally so far. Our team is on 5 continents. And that's who we are. I'm really excited for the discussion today. I think we all believe in the idea of providing better information to the market so that all of you and all of your partners can trade and act and be incentivized to create better projects. We strongly believe in the idea that if there is a price premium for higher quality projects, project developers and their partners will in turn create better quality projects that will have better outcomes for the climate, because this is, after all, a climate fight. That is our ultimate goal. We're going to use markets, we're going to use capital, we're going to use all the tools of the finance world, but this is really about addressing the climate crisis and creating a better planet for all of us to live on in perpetuity. And so that's how we're addressing it. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Thank you all. And I suppose I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce myself. Max DuBuisson. I work for Indigo Ag. We're a sustainable agriculture company developing carbon credits and sustainable supply chain solutions, and very eager to hear what we've got to say today. So let's start at the beginning on the demand side of things. Maybe Annalise, what does the demand look like? Who are the customers that are coming to you, and how are they using the ratings?
Yeah, so I think I'm a little bit of an odd man out up here because I'm not on the technical side per se, but I spend a lot of my time with clients helping them understand where the data comes from and how to use it. And really the thesis is that the closer that we can stay to clients, the closer that we can stay to the market and the people using the data. We love data, so that is sort of feeding back to us in terms of how we improve and develop our products to meet the needs of the market. We serve a variety of actors, from governments looking to action Article 6 and embed quality within those transactions, professional services clients. Bain recently made the inaugural VCMI claim, and that is underpinned by Sylvera ratings and Sylvera data. We work with the largest financial institutions who are setting up trading desks, who are looking to invest in the next sort of generation of projects as well. Oil and gas and energy clients who are also looking to, again, bring that next generation of both nature-based solutions as well as engineered solutions to the market, who are looking to action their own climate commitments as well, and corporates, of course. I think we all work with Salesforce. We all work with different corporates who are looking to find high-quality projects and invest in real climate action.
Thanks. Donna, what's your experience been on the demand side?
Yeah. So in some ways, I guess there's been a bit of a crisis of confidence in the market. And I think all of us, this is a very smart market crowd, right? This is, everyone knows it's been a challenge. And I think, so we really work with maybe 2 major segments of the market. First is companies who are buying, we say buy to retire, right? They have a climate commitment, and that's been super encouraging to see. This 10 years ago, like this did not exist, to have so many private sector companies making these climate commitments, wanting to do something about climate change, getting demands from their employees, from their shareholders to do something. And so I would say companies that are trying to do one of two things. One is optimize their impact. So we do work with companies who come to us and say, we really just want to buy the credits that have the highest impact possible. And they have different characteristics, like greenhouse gas integrity, absolutely, because the claim we're making is a compensation claim or offset claim. But many of them also want to have benefits to nature, to people, to health, to gender equity, to creating jobs and employment, and all these positive impacts. The other is, I would say, in some ways, maybe more salient today, is protecting their brand. So we have a lot of consumer-facing companies that feel like their brand is really important, and so they don't want to buy a credit that's going to somehow harm their brand. I would say the second bucket of demand that we get actually is we work with a number of intermediaries. Intermediaries like brokers, traders, people who are working with other customers, and they're trying to create their brand. And so they want to create a brand of quality, like we only broker, we only trade, and we're only going to provide you credits of high quality. So we work with a number of, we call them buy to sell. We do not work with project developers. I thought it'd be useful to say who we will not take finance from, because again, we feel like our interests are more aligned with the companies or universities or individuals who want to optimize their impact. So we really try to stay on that buy side. We do not get funded by project developers, and we don't take their finance.
Got it. So on the project development side, let's say project has selected a crediting program that's met, ECROA, CORSIA approval. They're using a methodology within the scope of that approval. They've hired an independent third-party verifier. Spencer, why do you think that maybe your organizations or your customers would see that as insufficient? What are you doing differently from those VVBs?
Yeah, good question. I think you mentioned the word integrity was on the agenda 17 times for the meeting. And I think if the current system or the previous system were sufficient, that probably wouldn't be true. I think, as Donna has said, there's been a crisis of confidence in the market for a number of years now. And there have been a lot of things that I think we all collectively as a community have understood weren't quite right, and it's an evolution. The market has been building. We've all been learning together. And a big part of that has been the accountability and the transparency of information that projects have been able to deliver. There have been a lot of red flags over the years. We don't need to sort of belabor the sort of headlines and all of that. But the new world, the new carbon markets, is demanding more transparency from projects. It's demanding more independent assessments. And at BeZero, we're very adamant in our analysis that it's the implementation, the execution of individual projects where the details happen, where the quality really occurs. And if you only follow the methodology and you only assess the methodology, you can't really assess whether you really achieve the outcomes you want or not. The BeZero carbon rating fundamentally is the probability that each credit that was delivered from each project is going to deliver 1 ton CO2e avoided or removed. And that's fundamentally what our rating is all about. And so we are focused on the outcomes of the projects and not whether or not the methodology was adhered to. Now, we've seen in the market that methodologies are improving rapidly now. Standards are upping their game. Standards are increasing transparency. We have a number of initiatives like ICBCM and others who are setting minimum thresholds for what those standards and what those methodologies must require. But what we've seen in our ratings after doing a few hundred of them is that there's huge variation in projects that come out of the same methodologies. You can have a really tight methodology or standard that still produces quite a bit of variation in the outcomes, the likelihood that those credits are going to produce 1 ton CO2e or not. And so we believe that you really have to be evaluating very specifically at the project level. So our analysis is really a mix of highly quantitative geospatial Earth observation kind of information, but it also includes a lot of qualitative information. That's the context of the project, the local context, the policy risks, the market in which that project is created. The project finance is a critical part of that. And when we look at the Earth observation work, it can assess a lot through MRV, but you can't understand the project finance components of it, and that's really important for baselining and additionality and those other things as well. So we believe it's really the specifics of the project itself that determine the eventual quality of the project, and so that's why we look at project-level execution.
So kind of digging into that a little deeper, like how would you address criticism that, it's an apple and oranges comparison, like what you're doing, well, you have maybe your own methodology that's different from the methodology that they were following, and maybe they're both legitimate ways to look at the impact and look at the same thing. Is it just, at that point, sort of a they said argument over what's the right methodology?
Well, I mean, I don't think the climate cares what your methodology was. I don't think the climate cares how good your methodology was. I don't think the climate cares what acronym you call your methodology. I think the climate cares if you removed the ton or not. And so that's why we're really focused there. I think again, as a community, we've all learned, right? A lot of the methodologies still being used were developed a really long time ago, before things like satellite and remote sensing was even a thing, or at least even a thing for measuring forests and evaluating. These methodologies were developed before we have all the technologies we have. The methodologies were developed largely before we had the market infrastructure that we have today. And they are evolving for sure, but they're not evolving quickly enough. And if you want to be able to use these credits as offsets, they need to be a ton. And we know that it's not really binary at this point in time. There's no magic threshold where you either were a ton or you were not a ton. And so that's why we take a risk-based approach to this. We think there's a continuum of the likelihood that you are actually removing or avoiding 1 ton. And so that's why we have our rating scale, and that's why we apply that across projects broadly. Yeah.
Okay. So let's shift to maybe these other quality initiatives. Go over to you, Donna. How do you view the role of the rating services in relation to, the ICVCM and things like CORSIA approval? And do you see demand for your services? Do you think that they will shift at all in a sort of post-CCP label world when the at least first wave of work by the ICVCM is done?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, full disclosure, I am on the expert panel of the ICVCM. And I think actually ratings agencies are really complementary to what the ICVCM is doing. And maybe it comes from a view very similar to you, Spencer, that the world of credits are not black and white. Like, you can't put credit into one of 2 buckets, like it's in or it's out. And that's what standards do, that's what the ICVCM does, that's what CORSIA does. It's kind of setting one threshold and then creating this black and white world, you're in or you're out. And I think just having actually visited many projects, having looked at many projects, we've also rated a large number of projects, I think it's almost impossible to just create this binary system of the quality of credits. And so we're very much aligned. I think a good way to think about this is similar to S&P and Moody's, right? So S&P and Moody's, they have, they rate financial instruments, everything from AAA, AA, different levels, depending on the ratings agency. And then somebody comes along and draws a line, right? And their line is maybe investment grade versus junk. And in some ways, I think that's what CORSIA, ICVCM standards do. They just create one minimum bar line, but I guess it's our view that there's still gradations above that line, and then there's gradations below that line as well. And furthermore to that, to our ratings that include also the sustainable development contributions, there are also these other attributes that are attached to many of these credits. Mm-hmm. And so those attributes too, you can't really just, again, create a black and white world. There's so many differences. So I think it's really complementary, ratings with the CCP label. I don't think the CCP label means that our ratings will be any less valuable, mm-hmm. because we're providing all this extra information. And the customers we work with, they like that information. They just don't want an in-out. In some ways, I remember that the ICVCM used to be called the TSVC, thank
Yeah.
you, the Task Force for Scaling, right? And it was this concept that all we need to do is create this bar, and then we create liquidity, and that's going to make the market scale. I think they quickly ran into and realized, no, actually it's integrity that's going to make the market scale. And they changed their name, and here we are. But I do think ratings will still be valuable.
And do you think that the sort of binary world right now is, I don't know, misguided, or there just will always be some, credit purchasers for whom that's fine, I got a label, and for others who say, I'd like to go deeper? Do you think it'll just always be both?
I think so. I actually think it's really helpful. In the same way, if you think about this investment junk, creating that line, I think is super helpful. I think it's really important for the market to set a minimum bar, right? And so I don't disparage any of those actors because I think they're providing a super valuable service.
Mm-hmm.
I think we just sort of go that next step and provide that additional information that will be important to some, and then others will, it's always going to be a balance between also, price, characteristics, wanting to contribute to nature, there's a range of things that go into a decision to purchase a credit.
Mm-hmm. In your opening remarks, you mentioned doing some work around governments and assessing, Article 6. Maybe let's go a little bit more into the regulatory and the regulated landscape. So, especially we've seen more scrutiny of corporate offsetting claims. We've got the SEC climate rule, EU Green Directive, these disclosure laws coming out in California. And where do you see the rating services kind of fitting into that shifting landscape of regulatory oversight of this corporate activity?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I don't know that I mentioned Article 6, but I am a former climate negotiator. So
I might have made it up.
I've represented the American people. I always tell people it's a very bruising experience to do so. Anyways, regulation. So it's really interesting. I think that the landscape is changing on regulation. We see these bodies get involved. 1305, I think, was one that has really impacted or put a lot of questions, I think, in people's mind. If any of you have read it, it's really poorly constructed. And the question is this a good thing? And I think one can argue about whether the timing is right. Like, I do believe transparency, what do they say, is the best disinfectant or something like that. And I do think driving accountability in this market is directionally a good thing. Now, whether or not the timing is good in this moment in time in the market where we're facing this crisis of confidence, I think we're all here, have the same mission, and we're trying to move the market to higher quality. But we're sort of in that phase where one can argue, okay, maybe now was, you're being buffeted and you're just like adding to that. So I think there's a question on the timing. But I do think overall the direction is right, and transparency is almost always a positive thing in the long run.
It's definitely something that we're really excited about at Sylvera, both in terms of compliance and voluntary carbon markets converging with Article 6, with Corsia, but also in terms of the wave of corporate sustainability disclosures and initiatives around transparency. We welcome these kind of regulations and rules because they provide confidence, they provide rules of engagement so that people can come off from the sidelines and really enter the market and help scale.
I would just add a bit more, too, that I think a lot of our clients, both on our platform where people subscribe to see our existing ratings, ex-post ratings, and also on the pre-issuance side, where we're working directly with clients to rate their projects that are in development. Everyone's really aware globally of the different policies that are coming down, whether it's Article 6 or it's corresponding adjustments or it's regulatory issues in the U.S. People are asking us a lot about that and how our ratings will affect or will be affected by that. And so we've really put our products forward in a way that can be adaptable as regulations come, because we're looking really at the individual project level, whether that project is being used for a regulatory claim or a voluntary claim. We're really agnostic to that. So we're in a position to be able to rate projects no matter what they're being used for. We also welcome the regulation in the way that my colleagues described, because, again, we're deploying a sort of financial markets model to the carbon market. And the financial markets are, fully regulated. We ourselves expect to be regulated and welcome that. We have set up our organization with a Chinese wall, for example, between our commercial and our ratings operation in anticipation of regulation. We expect our clients to be regulated more, whether it's through disclosure laws or through trading laws. And so we just right from the get-go have set ourselves up in that way because we believe in the future we will be working in a broad carbon market that includes regulatory and non-regulatory options. So we don't shy away from that. We think disclosure, as Donna said so well, is really important and will drive transparency, and so we're well aligned with that.
That's interesting. Moving on that point, Annalise, maybe can you speak any deeper into oversight here and kind of like who's watching over your shoulders?
Yeah, I think Sylvera has been watching other industries, particularly ESG ratings. I think there are a lot of differences, but also a lot of parallels in terms of just providing the shades of gray above a certain threshold. I think people are also hungry for not just ratings, but also these sort of underlying data, moving towards metrics. But if within the sort of the ESG realm, BeZero and Sylvera have both signed up for the application of the ICMA rules and code of conduct around ESG ratings and data product providers within this space. It's a mouthful. ICMA is the International Capital Markets Association, and we are voluntarily applying this sort of code of conduct, anticipating that regulation will come. There will be people looking at how we are governing our sort of data, looking at systems and controls, conflicts of interest, as sort of Donna mentioned, in terms of where we are taking payments from. So you cannot pay for, as a developer, you cannot pay for a rating, and as well as transparency, so educating the market about our methodology. And we really welcome these regulations and this kind of code of conduct because it is essential for a functioning market. It helps to provide data that is consistent and accurate, and again is essential for the market to scale with integrity.
Just to confirm what Annalise said, we're also a signatory to ICMA, and we're headquartered in London, I should say, and so there's a lot of talk right now about ESG ratings agencies regulations, and so we're following that very closely, and as I said, we've already put a lot of governance mechanisms into place, safeguards within the organization in anticipation of all that, so we're ready to go.
So bringing it back to the beginning, in terms of the demand of this, how are you seeing ratings affecting pricing? Spencer, are you guys seeing impacts there on the credits in the projects that you're rating?
We are, and we're really excited about that because, as I said at the beginning, that's really our basic theory of change. If you provide a sort of a mechanism for a price premium for higher quality projects, you'll incentivize people to produce higher quality projects, and there's a virtuous cycle in that that the markets offer. We've produced quite a bit of research in a few different iterations, including a little over a month ago, we put out a new report that's available on our website, looking at the correlation between projects that have been rated and the level of quality of those ratings and prices in the market. And what we've seen is for every letter you go up, so we have a D to AAA rating scale ourselves, like the finance markets. And for every letter rating that you increase, there's a 25% price premium on average in the market across all the transactions we've looked at. We've worked with Expansive and their CBL marketplace to do this research. For A and better, there's an 80% price premium. So we're already seeing this in the market. When there was the liquidity problems in the market last year, the correlation weakened. As that came roaring back at the end of the year and early this year, that correlation has strengthened. That relationship itself of the price premium has increased by 40% since I think it was 2022 when we were able to do some of that work. So we're seeing a strong signal on that. We also have just had our ratings put on the Bloomberg terminal. So people that are trading in the traditional finance markets now are able to see our ratings in that important place. So we're very aware that our ratings are starting to move markets. We've also had people tell us that our ratings have started to show up as performance benchmarks in contracts we have nothing to do with. We don't ever see buy-sell contracts, so we're aware of that. Our ratings are also now showing up in a few different insurance products as a part of the parameterization of the quality and the risks associated with those. So there's really a number of ways that the theory of change of using the traditional capital markets mechanisms is now showing up in the carbon markets as well, and we're really very excited about that. We think the ratings are a public good, in essence, and so we do make all of our headline ratings freely available publicly through our website. You do have to log in, but then you have access to all of our ex post issued credit ratings. If you want all the deep due diligence below that, come talk to us. We're happy to talk to you about a subscription to our platform. But the ratings themselves, we believe, is a public good. They're dynamic, and over time they should change. I'm told in the finance markets there's something like 30% volatility on average per year. And so we are not afraid of a little bit of volatility, but at the same time we know people get nervous about that, so that's something we pay close attention to. But again, these ratings have become a market signal, and I've had a number of conversations, even just over the last few days here, anecdotes from people who say that projects that have been rated highly sell out very quickly. They sell at a higher price premium, and that's great news. That's how it ought to work, so we're excited to be seeing that.
That's fascinating. Okay, so for anybody on the panel, how's it going? Are there good projects out there, or are they all bad? Like, how are we doing here out there? And, these buyers, are there high-quality projects for them to buy?
I would say that on the upstream side, in terms of the sort of next generation of projects that we talk about, there are definitely high-quality projects in the pipeline. There's also still a variety of credit quality and project quality, so providing what we call sort of pre-issuance assurance, making sure that people can bake in quality parameters into their long-term offtake agreements, into their investments. I think the sort of secondary market does get battered. There is high quality within that range. I think it's kind of about, to use your language, I suppose, right sizing. So understanding beyond just sort of a high level rating, digging into what is driving something like over-crediting risk and perhaps using a sort of equivalence approach. So there are different mechanisms in place, both an understanding of credit quality, but also in terms of like a discounting, so that you can use credits that are available on the market and integrate them into your carbon market strategy.
Okay. I'm going to be honest, there's not a lot of high quality. That's the short answer. We've looked at 470 plus projects, and of these, and we rate from A plus to E, 3% of the volume gets our A plus. That means that it's a very small proportion in which we are not finding some risk factor, whether it's the risk of being a non-additional, whether we feel like it's not robustly quantified, there's non-permanence risk, or the risk of double counting. So we use these 4 buckets. They're the same as the ICVCM. But here's the optimistic piece around that. I think that if we rate something highly, like an A or a B, it gets mopped up very quickly, just like Spencer. And that's good, right? It just means that the market really wants quality, and that's really nice. I also agree with Annalise that there's a lot of upstream activity right now, a lot of investors going upstream to create high-quality supply. I do think we're at this moment in the market it's a transition, right, in some ways, and it's a little bit painful. And I recognize I had a chat with one of you in this room earlier this morning, and they're like, "You're part of the pain," and I get that, like we are. Like, I still believe that in the long run, we are helping to support and scale this market. But it is painful. But I think we need to go through this correction in order to see this market unleash the potential that it has. So I'm optimistic. I think we're moving from, what we call like VCM 1.0 to 2.0. So I'd love for you to ask me this question at the next NACW.
One of the also outcomes that one of our clients was sort of, that I think she phrases brilliantly, is that because the carbon market and the available supply has been so battered, there's been this pendulum swing of people spinning up 8-person origination teams, being able to source these high-quality projects upstream, and that's fundamentally not how the market scales. So we're in this transition, and we need the pendulum to kind of come back towards using data providers, using trusted third parties to be able to provide that due diligence and the risk function, so that you can move on to sort of other parts of your corporate sustainability job, or sort of more fun things than project-level diligence.
We haven't found any AAAs yet. That's the highest rating on our scale. We have plenty of AAs, we have plenty of Ds, we have plenty of everything in between, but we haven't found a AAA yet. We're always on the lookout for it. Bring us one. We'd love to hear about one. We have probably beyond the scope here, but we have an entire risk framework. We look at all the different categories of risk: additionality, overcrediting, non-permanence, leakage, et cetera, policy risk, execution risk. And so any one of those categories can really ding the projects. Additionality does have the highest leverage in our framework, and so that's very important. And so it's really tough to find a AAA, so we would love to find one of those. In addition to all the public ratings that we have, we've done a lot of work since we launched a new product last August on the ex-ante side, or the pre-issuance side that we've mentioned up here. And this is a rapidly growing business area for us. Because of this controversy there's been in the market, people are looking further upstream. You know, investors and project developers and off-takers, they want to know how their project's going to be perceived by the market before they ever come to market. And so they're coming to us, and we're doing a large number of ex-ante ratings. These are private ratings that we do directly with any kind of client. Sometimes they're, finance firms and project developers coming together as a partnership, and they want to understand what those risks are going to be. We provide this issuance, pre-issuance risk report to them, and then they can, go off and do what they want with that. Eventually, those projects we expect to come to market, and then we will rate them at some point in time, which is why we don't do advisory or consulting services on those projects. We simply do our risk assessment for them. I would say the conversations that we have on the pre-issuance side are very encouraging. I think a lot of people have started to recognize the price premium. They hear about this, or maybe they've experienced it themselves. They're running away from the controversy and the reputational risk. And so they're making different decisions as they're designing their next projects. As I said at the outset, any one methodology still leaves a lot of room for interpretation and a lot of different assumptions. There's a lot of levers and dials you can turn when you're doing your baselining, for example, or when you're doing your project finance modeling. And it sounds to me like people are making a lot more conservative decisions, even under the existing methodologies. And they're also moving to some of the newer methodologies that themselves have less risk on average. And so I'm very optimistic about the coming supply. People are building tomorrow's supply. They're not really as focused on yesterday's supply. So again, I think like Donna said, let's talk about this again next year and the year after and see where we are. But I'm quite optimistic about the future supply that we will see in the market.
And can I just jump in and just make one little point, which is just because there's not a AAA, or just because we have only found so little A plus on our side, I don't think that that's a good reason not to engage in the market. We need this market. It's a wedge in, I look across all of climate policy, and maybe I'm a little bit bruised from working under various administrations in the United States where you just can't get that carbon price out of Congress. But this market can do so much to help kickstart a lot of mitigation activity. So I don't want people to feel like, there's only 3% and it gets mopped up really quickly, I'm just going to do nothing. That's a worse outcome, to do nothing and step back from the market. I think it's still good to engage, and then just be honest. Just be honest about the risks that you're taking in doing so. I always feel encouraged and when people take those risks. And I see companies take those risks all the time, and I think that's great.
Thank you for saying that. That's a really important message. I agree with that. And we don't draw any line. We don't have a stance on what a minimum rating ought to be. We don't think it's our place to say what that threshold is. There are people out there who are happy to buy relatively inexpensive, relatively lower rated credits for their own purposes. Just like in the finance markets, there's, people buy junk bonds. That's a thing. People have different reasons for buying different products in the marketplace. We're providing the vehicle for them to understand what they're buying. But I agree entirely with that, Donna, so thanks for bringing that up. I think that, over the last few years, there's been we're demand constrained. No, we're supply constrained. No, we're demand constrained. What's very clear to me right now in talking to many of you this week and over the last maybe 6 months, if you have a really good project, you are definitely, if you are looking for a really good project, you are supply constrained. That is crystal clear to me in the conversations I'm having. There is simply not enough of those because they're getting bought up quickly, which is driving demand for those. And so if you're hearing stories about being demand constrained, that's a different story. But for high quality projects, sort of medium and better quality projects, there's a strong signal of being supply constrained right now. And the people we talk to who are doing the pre-issuance ex-ante projects are very aware of that. And I think that's what's happening. There's that feedback loop that's happening in the market. And let's talk again in a year and see where we are.
Thank you. I got one more, and then we're going to go to the audience. So if you've got questions, get ready. So for anybody who would like to weigh in on this topic of feedback loops, like how much are you giving feedback to the project developers and even to the standards bodies based on the ratings that you're giving and what you're seeing in the project? I know you don't want to consult to the projects that you're rating, but do they get enough information to know what they need to do to fix things that you think are need fixing?
Yes, we provide very thorough analysis of projects that we do, whether on the ex post or the ex ante side of things. We don't then say if you changed X, Y, or Z, your rating would go up or go down or whatever. We believe that would be a conflict of interest, particularly on the ex ante side, because someday we will rate that project once it comes to market, once it's out there in the public domain. And so we don't want to be a part of that. We don't want to have future conflicts of interest, so we're isolating ourselves from that. That said, our analytical work is really quite detailed. And so when you get that report, there's very actionable information, and people can go and do what they want with that. I think, all of the experts that are working and developing these projects kind of know what to do with that information, but we just don't want to be in that advisory business at this point. But yes, there's highly actionable information in there.
Sure.
There's a couple different levels of engagement that Sylvera has with the market. We have a developer engagement process for all of our ratings, kind of similar to what Spencer has been mentioning, where we walk through the process for assessment, the data that we use, and the outcomes, and provide an opportunity to respond. Before we ever launch a framework and subsequent ratings, we also have a framework review committee where we encourage and invite project developers, people from the ICVCM, buyers, investors to come and sort of scrutinize the framework that we propose, or sort of our method for approaching a project type. We've also provided data on the sort of range of quality projects to people like the ICVCM. We sit on several working committees on the registry level, making sure that not only are we providing data on the sort of rating level, but also in forest carbon and our multi-scale LiDAR data as well. So really making sure that our data is being integrated into the upcoming quasi-regulatory and regulatory schemes.
So I'll just answer quickly, and then I guess that questions might be more interesting. So the same, we will engage with project developers, give them a summary of our rating, tell them where we found the risks, and invite them to also provide more data and information, ideally to the registry, if they feel like providing that can actually improve their rating. But I think you asked something that's important, which is how do we as ratings agencies really help and lift the industry as a whole to accelerate those feedback mechanisms and to engage standards to help change methodologies. And honestly, I think it's something that we should all think about, because I think it's important. And I think accelerating this transition, we have all learned so much from doing these deep due diligence across many different project types. And I'd love, if anybody has ideas of how to do this, I think we should. I think we should think about how can we play in this ecosystem in a way to accelerate that transition and quicken that feedback loop. And I guess there's more things for sure that we can be doing, and I'd love to think about that more.
I love the idea of, the rating services sitting in on these working groups as methodologies are getting developed. I think it's great.
Yeah, I neglected to answer that part of the question. So we do supply, even when a project developer hasn't engaged us around a rating, we do send our rating to that project developer for their information. We send them the full write-up, analytical write-up, for them to just have that. Sometimes they then provide more information. They want to clarify things, and so our ratings are dynamic and live, and so we have a watch system where we can update our ratings when we get new information, whether that's from one of the registries, whether it's from a project developer directly, whether there's some new peer-reviewed research out there that has something to say about a project or a sector type. Our ratings are live, so we will update them, and that's an important part of the feedback, is being able to provide that rating to the project developers directly. We also have pretty regular conversations with all the standards bodies. Sometimes they will come to us and ask us, if they've seen a whole group of projects under a particular methodology that end up with a similar risk assessment. They might ask us about that, and we will share that information and give them the feedback. We know of at least a couple examples where that has led to updates in the methodology because there might have been a bit of a hole in one of the components of the methodology. And we also sit on some of these working groups, ICVCM in particular, on a couple of the working groups there.
Great. Okay, let's go to questions. I think I saw, Jody, did your hand start to go up before?
It did.
All right, you get to go first.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jody Manning. I am the CEO of Cool Effect. We're a nonprofit based here in San Francisco. First of all, thank you to all of you for basically being on the firing line here with the questions. My question is, you have hundreds of ratings. I'm loosely saying hundreds. There's thousands of projects. I would love to know how you plan to scale. And secondly, how do you plan to include CDR?
CDR broadly, like the whole category?
Like, are you doing any of the carbon capture?
Yes. We already do that, yeah, now. I would say there's a lot of interest in that on the pre-issuance side, and because they're private ratings, I can't share any of that here, but there's quite a bit of that work, and we have as well. We put out the first 2 biochar ratings in the market a couple months ago, I think it was. So we work across all the sectors as new sectors are evolving and emerging. We're certainly rating those. We're filling in our expertise as those new sectors kind of emerge with experts, with people that have expertise in those sectors. The first part of the question?
Scale.
Oh, yeah, scale. So we have a team of 70 analysts right now. Those are just the people doing the analytical work separate from the rest of the business. And so that's pretty significant scale. That's what allows us to do a lot of the projects. As I've said, a lot of our business is on the ex-ante side. Those projects take quite a bit longer for us to rate. There's a lot more information. It's not always in the format like the PDDs you would get from the registry, so it just takes more time. There's just a little more uncertainty there, so it takes quite a bit of time. We have clients that want to be able to evaluate their own projects without us having to do a full rating, and so we have a scorecard, a self-serve scorecard product that's part of our platform that's become really popular. We're rolling those out one sector at a time. We have a few of them available now. If you are a subscriber to our platform, you have access to that. So that's one way that's become quite popular for some of our customers to be able to do that themselves. We also are looking at other levels of analysis we can do. There's the full deep dive, very in-depth ex-ante. There's also a lighter version of that, just what we call a risk assessment report, which takes less time, and so we're able to scale that way and more rapidly respond to our clients' needs. That's on the ex-ante side. So yeah, I'll stop there.
It's a great question, Jody. There's probably over 4,000 actively traded projects, right? And the question for us is, how do we prioritize? And I think what's interesting, I think maybe all of us did this in the beginning, is you start with trying to get market share, right? And you're, in some ways you're lucky because there's such high concentration. There are a few hundred projects that issue over 1 million tons each. If you knock off those first few hundred, which maybe some of us have done, you can capture over 50% because there's as you would say, the long tail, right? There's a long tail. So we started there, but then what we discovered is that big projects actually score poorly. So there's 2 big project types, right? There's RED and large-scale grid-connected renewable energy. So ACM2 and RED make up massive part of the market. So we rated all these projects, and then our customers thanks. You've told us what not to buy. That is not helpful to us because most of our customers really do want, and it's nice, they want to drive impact. And so what we did is we pivoted about 1.5 years ago. We have this independent panel. These are people that have been in the market for decades, right? People that have been in the CDM meth panel. They've been watching the market. So we got them together. It was a council. Where can we find good projects? What's going to drive quality? Where can we actually find more A and B ratings? Because it's kind of depressing also for analysts who rate, project after project after project of large-scale grid-connected wind in China or something. rating. That's just not helpful. It's not helpful to motivation. It's not helpful to the market. It's not helpful to our customers. So we really pivoted about a year and a half ago to looking for those good projects and using expertise from our panel, from our network to say, to like go after those projects that we think are going to be higher quality. And so if you look at our distribution on our website, there's a distribution. It doesn't reflect the marketplace, to be honest. It is more heavily weighted towards the A, B, C range because we purposely go after those projects that we think are going to be higher quality. So we do like a first pass, and that's how we're trying to provide the most useful information to our customers.
I'll be a bit brief on this because I want to get to some other questions. But in terms of building for scale, Sylvera has invested in building systems for scale and enabling analysts to utilize technology and automation where possible so that we can scale. Sylvera has 15,000 projects on its platform. Not all of them are rated. And part of our journey to scale and having a wider coverage of the market is providing different data products to help buyers along their journey. So looking at methodology assessments, country-level assessments, bringing in risk factors so that you have a view of a broader market but can still rely on the in-deep due diligence at the carbon credit rating level without sacrificing that depth for scale. In terms of engineered solutions, it's absolutely a major interest in the market. And so moving upstream, as Spencer has mentioned, a lot of that relies on material non-public information. So they're not public, but they are used by investors and project developers, insurance agencies to be able to have a risk assessment and invest in high-quality projects.
Just briefly on that prioritization point, we, early on, we're looking to cover the market broadly. We have about 900 million tons represented by our 400 some odd ratings right now of our public ex post ratings, separate from the pre-issuance ones. Now, a lot of our prioritization is driven by two key factors. So clients of our platform can request we rate certain projects. So when someone has an interest in a project that they want to buy, presumably, they can request that rating if they're already a customer of ours. And so those will be higher priority for us to rate. We also have an analyst-led prioritization process. So every one of the sectors in the market has a lead on the BeZero team. In fact, Linus, our IFM portfolio lead, is here at the conference as well. And so those analysts who know the sector best and are aware of what's emerging, they're aware of the emerging methodologies and projects that are getting issued under the new methodologies, have their own prioritization sort of wish list of what's interesting and what's new in the market. And sometimes that's driven by large issuances, sometimes it's driven by new methodological changes, but we're also driven in a priority way by client requests.
We've got some over here and some back there. Who you can get to?
Hi, everyone. Mark Havel at A New Climate. Thank you so much for being here. And I have a lot of questions, but in the interest of time, let me just stick to one and be very quick about it. As a project developer, we're very heartened to hear that there's the potential that ratings agencies will work maybe more closely with registries and standards bodies, right? I think that could really streamline the process and get us to scale towards quality projects more quickly. Would love to hear everyone's thoughts on incorporating private or versus public information into the ratings. In many cases, we need to share proprietary and sensitive information to verifiers and registries in order to be registered and issue credits, but that's not necessarily going to be made public, right, on the registry websites. So we'd love to hear how each of your organizations handles that and what that process looks like.
I can take that, at least to start. So we, for a long time, had a very strong public information doctrine where we would only take public information. We would only use public information, and there's a number of sources for that. The biggest, of course, is the registries themselves. We have a whole separate data team that's built systems and processes to scrape information from the registries, to work with the registries to collect that information in an ongoing, sort of near real-time update fashion. We have recently amended our public info doctrine to include the ability to have private information, because what we've learned over time in doing a lot of ratings is that there are sometimes is key information we're not aware of or not able to have access to that materially affects these projects. Sometimes it's project finance information, sometimes it's like specific boundaries of certain properties, particularly on the nature-based side. And there's other information that, project developers are just simply for their own competitive reasons not able to share, as you mentioned, Mark. So we've recently started doing that. We have a new policy available on our website about that. We do still have a minimum requirements of what information has to be public. There are certain things we will not, that we will only use if they're public, and we routinely work with project developers and request. We say, look, this information is not available. We can't rate it until it is available. For example, we will not rate a project if we don't know where it is. The registries don't always have the locations of projects, and so that's a non-starter for us. So that, we have a whole category of unrateable projects on our website, and as that information becomes available, we will then rate it. But more directly with your question, we've had a lot of good engagement with project developers and other actors in the market who are able to provide information that materially affects our ratings. And we appreciate when people bring that to us. We will look at it, our analysts will look at it, decide if it's material, and if so, that could trigger a review of the rating. So that's something we've done recently. That's something we've learned over time is really important. But we still to us, it's really important that transparency in the market is accelerated over time. And so we encourage and in some cases require that information to be made publicly available. We do have the capacity through NDAs and other tools to protect that information. So we have some project developers who don't want the individual polygons of certain landowners or of landowners in the project made publicly available, but they're able to share it with us under NDA so we can do our analytical work, but not turn around and share that. So they wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't be willing to put it on the registry, for example. So we do that.
Got it. Donna, Annalise, anything you guys would add to the question?
How are we on time?
We are at time. It's lunchtime, so I'm willing to take another question after this if folks want to. I feel like there's a lot of questions out here. I saw hands going up. So do you want to weigh in here, or should we go for another question?
I just want to, if it might be more interesting to have another question.
Sure.
I'm happy to answer your question, though, Mark, after the meeting.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this really, this is a vexed topic right now. So I'm Shannon Smith. I work for Chestnut Carbon, and we're an afforestation carbon removal credit developer. So my question is going to be directed to BeZero, although I'm curious what the rest of you say. BeZero recently published and promoted that pricing scale. But your pricing scale went from $4 to $8. And so the market signal that you gave was the highest quality credit out in the market right now can be had for $8, when actually we're seeing high quality IFM credits priced at 25 to 29 and afforestation starting at 50. So what role, if you're going to put pricing information out to the market, do you play in setting expectations among buyers that they are going to have to pay more? And this sort of vague reference of premium, is starting to have market pricing.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't actually remember what the Y scale is on that graph, so I'll take your word for it. Each of the bubbles on those graphs, sorry to be talking about this sort of abstractly since I don't have it up on a slide here. Each of the bubbles on that graph that shows that regression, the size of that indicates the number of projects that were in that analysis. And so those are means of different categories, of different ratings. So the pricing data goes way higher than that. You're absolutely correct. And so what you just described, I would say, is a communications challenge, and I'll bring that back to our team. That's a great point. That graph should say on it, for example, what the max is of the pricing, of the prices in there, because a lot of those higher quality projects do certainly have much higher prices. So thank you for the feedback. I appreciate that.
Thanks. Good question. So I think I'd be remiss as a moderator if I didn't sort of cut things off at this point and let everybody have their lunch. But please join me in thanking our panelists. This was super interesting, super exciting. So enjoy your lunch. Thank you.